Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jimena Amaya, and this is Lavinia Lascaris. We're the creative and programming team at the HMCT. Before we get started, we would like to share some context about today's event. It all starts with the exhibition titled Digital Witness, currently on view at LACMA, exploring image manipulation technology and its impact on design, photography, and film. At HMCT, we collaborated with LACMA to present a satellite exhibition under the same title, focusing specifically on algorithms for typography and language.
So it was these two exhibitions that offered us the opportunity to organize this panel discussion with LACMA's team, pairing one artist from each exhibition. We are very excited to have Ivan Cruz join us to moderate the discussion. Ivan is a creative technologist, a motion designer, and faculty member at ArtCenter College of Design, teaching creative code. So thank you so much, Ivan, for agreeing to participate. Thank you, Allison and Zach, and thank you everyone for attending. Ivan, we'll pass it on to you, and we'll be here in the background in case you need us.
We're all in the same room. I just want to show you everybody. Great. So I again, thanks. I just want to thank LACMA and HMC for organizing this together. I'm really excited, especially after just like diving deeper into Allison's and Zach's work. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to get started with this talk before we even kind of go into the panel discussion. And let me go to right here. Okay, so sorry about all that. I am sharing this on my Miro board here, but so algorithm and rhyme. That's the name of our panel discussion, and more importantly, I was just kind of always wondering why this poster was picked for this panel discussion in our links, and the more that I was thinking about it, and the more that I kind of was learning about this poster is by April Greiman, and it's like one of the first posters to be made with the Apple computer, and so let me zoom in here because I think that's like we could kind of see the details here, and you could kind of see this. The main highlight of this is this wave. So this photograph of a wave that was digitized and pixelated, right? Like you could kind of see almost this pattern in here. And what one of the things that April Greiman did was start zooming into these pixels and kind of examining the details of what these digital artifacts, and that's like a little clue here that we see here, and we kind of zoom in, and if you kind of just remember this pattern, let me move this here a little bit. If you kind of remember this pattern here, we see that again, but just blown up, and so I kind of see this as zooming into the atoms or the pixels, right, of what digital means, and the more that I was thinking about this in terms of our panel discussion, it's I think we're even zooming in even more. It's like we're kind of going into this almost like the string theory, or going deeper and thinking about the algorithms and the logic that kind of even puts these pixels in place. And here we have our two guests that are they spend their whole career thinking and manipulating these algorithms. And so I thought it was just wow, that's such a great connection. And I'm not sure if that was intentional, but I really just like how I that kind of came together. Well, actually, I want to start introducing myself and Allison and Zach. So as Lavinia said, I'm a motion designer, creative technologist, and I've been working with algorithms pretty much since I started. I think it really gave me a sense of control and of I didn't have to rely on any other program for me to kind of do what I wanted to do. So algorithms is a really big part of my work because I could create my own tools. And I've been teaching at ArtCenter for over 10 years. So let me introduce to Allison. Allison is a poet, programmer, educator. Her work explores language as data. And what I really like about her work is she looks at language from every single aspect, from line breaks to the spacing, to even like new words to the sounds, and I really love her work, and I'm glad to have her here. And Zach Lieberman is an artist, educator, founder of the School of Poetic Computation, and his work blends code, visuals, and interactivity to express very deep human ideas. And again, thanks again for being here. And I'm going to hand it off to Allison. And what I want to do is just kind of introduce your work for a few minutes, and then we'll go back to Zach, and then we'll kind of continue our discussion.
All right. So as has been mentioned, I'm Allison Parrish. I'm an assistant arts professor at New York University in the Interactive Telecommunications / Interactive Media Arts program. I'm here in my office today. I was thinking about the importance of computation in my work, and I think it really comes down to the sort of modernist compositional concept of the juxtaposition. Like, how do you take language and put it together in new ways that make language do things that it hasn't done before? And that's really the purpose that I use. That's the reason that I use computation, because it has that affordance. So I'm going to talk through a couple of different projects that do that. So the first is compasses, and this is the one that is, or it's one of the pieces that's on display in the exhibition. So this came from the original impulse, or one of the original impulses was wanting to be able to make poetry algorithmically that looks like Baroness Elsa von Freytag-Loringhoven's Dada sound poetry, another sound poetry like this, also like the Zaum artists from early 20th century Russian artists. So being able to create imaginary words that have particular emotional characteristics. And of course, there are a whole bunch of ways of doing this. My way of doing this was to develop a machine learning model. It's called Pencilate. This I made back in like 2018, long before the advent of large language models. It's not trained on like a large language model. It's not fine-tuned from something. It's trained on a data set called the CMU Pronouncing Dictionary. Basically what it does is you put in the spelling of a word and it predicts the phonemes of the word. If you put the phonemes of the word in, it predicts the spelling, and vice versa. It kind of looks like this, and I'm not going to go into the technical details. But the main interesting and cool thing about this, and being able to make something like this as an artist and as a developer, is that you can kind of poke around into the model and mess it up at different stages, or insert random numbers at particular places, change the weights of the outputs, and so forth. So one of the things that once I had this model developed that I was able to do was something kind of interesting, which is find the average between two words based on both their spelling and their sound. So basically, if I put in the word paper, it produces a vector that represents the word paper. If I put in the word plastic, it puts a vector that represents the word plastic. If I average the two and then feed that back into the model at that same point, I get pesite, which is halfway between paper and plastic. Halfway between kitten and puppy, the model says puppy. Halfway between birthday and anniversary, the model says Arthur Day. Halfway between artificial and intelligence, it says Intellifizzle. With this model and with that capability, I came up with an idea for a form of poetry that I call a compass poem, which consists of, I'm going to show like the compositional process here. It consists of 4 corner words, which belong to a quartet of related words that aren't in a hierarchy. They don't have an order, but they're still a closed set. So here are like the 4 cardinal directions. And then the model, I have the model find the average word between those 2 words, between each of the corners. And then in the middle, the average of all of the words. So this one goes north, earth, east, suet, south, woust, west, worth, earth. I'll show a few more of these. Noon, through, 3, this, 6, Nick, 9, noon, fine. Another one. Cyan, Magne, magenta, Malet, yellow, Ballo, black, Bleen, Mita, Google, Agelzen, Amazon, Acebound, Facebook, Aspel, Apple, Ogle, and Aspel. And I made a whole bunch of these, and they're up on a wall somewhere there in LA, and you can go look at them. The second thing that I want to talk about is Wendet Tints Inf. This is me trying to take the same kind of work that I was doing with the sound of language and apply it to the visual appearance of language instead. So to do that, to kind of have like a malleable vector representation of language, of the visual appearance of language, I trained a machine learning model called a GAN. Again, this was back pre, stable diffusion days, back when we were using these more elegant tools for more enlightened age, like a GAN. And what I did is I trained this model on a bunch of bitmaps of words, so images of words. And after a while, when you train this model, it sort of becomes able to output images that look like your input images, but not quite like those. And I stopped it at just the right point to get the results that I was looking for. So it's outputting things that, like, kind of from a distance, if you squint, they look like real English words, but they're not, right? And then I designed an algorithm to kind of typeset these in the traditional way that you typeset a text with Latin characters, moving from left to right, full justifying it. So again, it kind of looks like it could be an English language text, but it isn't. Aleator Press, which is a publisher that publishes computer-generated literature and other experimental literature. It's run by James Ryan, and we wanted to do a project together. So I suggested this, suggested using this model. And this is the result of that. It's a book called Wendet Tints Inf. The title was generated by the model. And James did this like really beautiful letterpress of the poems. We're calling them like prose poems, I guess. All handmade editions. James was happy with the deckled edges on here that makes it look like it's a, actual nice artifact, which it is. So I want to do like a very brief reading of one of the pages here so you can get a sense of what it sounds like. Cerns boon I en gyngeoir, the Thmire Walera I gus high, who yesk so erenzas of ha fiund thoitis obsix wo turnale, Burra kaivi thahi niddy sorrel wang ter fem winnets your wang to doines si ArtCenter, Faganit God, Wirya inat nia wides vedek sheev, Otir millet oninct pain, Gyati their thiuk searest muvg skyner. Tavali areen our ewe had andal cargaths, abroys, Piesel and Mories those winter baltal hlo, Homer thavsi neuralt, Revi alms of ba hinre finepes, Tro belgle wes earl thekos hior the, Freen svihi afs, Wasi foilo nose, Kolar merets, Todd Joyce the Thane, in your thune, Thevgafe ova, so sasi aban, thoice bars mer I spalvexlifs cheese as if be me errol, POs, na ivga erangle errol iter swanga, Git nisna I it fee torn oyo nini yang ton to wem and sek shoyel's foot or so and yodel in si tove fo shaherza sign prat yo ear reprins. I want to talk about one more thing. This just came out last year. It's a piece called Drafts from Text Press. I've been doing a bunch of stuff with machine learning for quite some time, and I kind of wanted to get back to some more basic concepts of computation. So this is a short book of poetry that's based on the weaving draft, which is a notation for weaving that shows how you set up a loom in order to create a woven piece of fabric. A weaving draft normally looks something like this, where the pattern for the threading of the warp is along the top, and the pattern for the treadling, or in other words, like which shafts are lifted. I realize this means nothing to people who don't know how a loom works, but and then the tie-up is how the treadling is connected to the threading, and then this big section over here is the drawdown. It shows what those instructions, what the woven fabric will look like when it's woven. According to the instructions in the threading and the treadling and the tie-up. So I did a series of poems where instead of the threads being yarn of different colors, the threads are each individual letters, but it's still following the rules of the drawdown. So here I'm doing a tabby draft of the word abracadabra woven with itself. So you get like abracadabra, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I haven't practiced it. This is a more complicated example. It just has one of the definitions of weaving from Wikipedia as the warp and the weft, the threads running lengthwise, horizontal interlaced threads. And you get this arrangement of repetition that is, both revealing and obscuring the text that goes into it. And it's a very, I used a computer program to generate this, but you could just do this by hand as well. Here's another piece with an Annie Albers quote. Nature shows herself to us only in part. Art shows us a wholeness we can comprehend. And this is one of my favorites that I actually forgot to include in the manuscript that I sent to Text Press. So you get to see this exclusive outtake from the book. It's just a color and weave pattern with root in the warp and leaf in the weft. And you get these nice sort of algorithmic combinations of the words root and leaf. That's all I've got.
Oh, thanks, Allison. I mean, you kind of almost like set me up with a really good like transition to Zach, how we're like kind of weaving together our discussion together here. Zach, can you share a little bit of your work as well?
Okay, great. So my name is Zach Lieberman. I'm an artist based in New York. I'm actually not far from Allison right now, probably walking distance, but based here. I'm a professor at MIT at the Media Lab, and I do sort of art, commercial work, and teaching. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Everything I do is created with software. I'm writing code. And I write code to make images. I write code to make animations. I write code to make interactive work. Oftentimes doing things that take the body as input or simple ideas like gesture, and try to find kind of creative ways of using them. But again, everything is created with code. And I saw this quote recently. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said that kids shouldn't learn how to code. They should leave it up to AI. Yeah, I'm with you, Allison. I fundamentally disagree. Big 2 thumbs down. I think that computation is the central medium of our lifetime. And it's not just a technical medium, but it's a cultural medium. And as artists, as designers, we should be exploring it and engaging with it and working with it. So yeah, big thumbs down to this quote. The way I work with code is I do daily sketches. So for almost 10 years, I started January 1st, 2016. I post something every day. These are like short poems that I make with code that are oftentimes exploring different graphical ideas like light and reflection, blobs, 3D things that look like 2D. When you do something over and over again, you have to make shortcuts. Here, this kid wrote this sentence, "I will make better choices." And you can see they've like optimized, like the L is just a single line. And when you do something again and again, you have to make shortcuts. And I think as an artist, as a designer, just constantly creating is how you find your style. And oftentimes I take a simple idea and I iterate on it. So I'll start with a simple gesture, like a curve that a line that only makes circular curves. And then I'll say like, oh, what would happen if I made it thicker? I'll try different shading. I'll try color. And then sometimes you'll find it in products that I can't talk about because of NDA. But you know, these sketches will make their way into the world in different ways. But again, I take the same idea, the same kind of graphical language, and I keep trying to iterate on it. And sometimes that's very simple ideas. Like when you learn to code, one of the first things that you learn is a bouncing ball, like making a ball bounce off the walls. And I thought about an idea like, what if the walls were bouncing off of the ball? So if you sort of like change the perspective so that the ball's in the center and then the walls are bouncing off of the ball, like I got kind of excited about it. Just a simple like what if question. And then I thought like, let's try like more than one, you know, and oftentimes I start with a simple sketch and I say, can I turn the volume knob up to 11, maybe 2 balls and have them be normalized. And then I try like 3 balls and 4 balls and, you know, it gets super weird. So oftentimes I start with a simple idea and then try to push it to like kind of the extreme. Sometimes I'm trying to convey a very complex idea, like after Trump was elected the first time, I felt like we were living in a sort of cartoon universe. I was excited about the New Year's and sort of really deeply unhappy and uneasy about the political situation. So trying to show sort of happiness and sadness at the same time. I really like kind of, yeah, anything that's like graphical, ink. I will make a lot of sketches that are about kind of drawing and taking drawing as a starting point. Have been doing a lot of experience with typography. This is an AR typography app where you can work with type and paint type in the air. A lot of work with the body, taking the body as a starting point, seeing what happens if you extrude it, revolve it, adding kind of layers onto it, new forms of costume. I've been making a lot of still images. So I've been printing. You can see behind me, these are all the prints. When I make a mistake, I put it on the wall. So all of these prints have a little error in them. But I love printing. Really inspired by the artist Jack Whitten, who is this painter I really admire. And he would make these crazy contraptions. His whole idea is he wanted to make a painting in like 10 seconds. So he would make this like carpentry, like crazy ideas, crazy constructions to make his paintings really quickly. And I've been doing the same thing in code, kind of making these shader programs that make images, trying to create almost this very complex system to make images, and been thinking a lot about kind of making images for these last years. And did a project recently. So these are all the same code, but kind of with adjustments. For the film studio A24 for Everything Everywhere All at Once, we made a songbook. So all of the sheet music for the movie, I basically listened to the soundtrack and I took the same piece of code and tried to find at that moment in the movie, or what does that song kind of remind me of? So I was able to make images for each of these songs in the soundtrack. So I got to listen to the soundtrack over and over again, which was exciting for me. And then have been thinking a lot about sunsets, the kind of color, the algorithms of sunsets, how to convey that computationally. And had this experience where I was traveling with my family. We lived on a boat and I was looking at the water on the light on the water and thinking about kind of how that would be impossible to code. Like in a million years, you can never write the algorithm to convey, like to capture what you were seeing. So I tried to see if I could capture that feeling, the feeling of light on water in code. So I've done a lot of experiments with kind of sunset and the colors of a sunset on water. So these are some examples of sketches. And the end was a project, a kind of generative project with 100 of these sunsets. And the idea is like maybe you had a very cool summer, you just paying attention all the time to the sunsets and you were watching them on the water. So trying to capture that feeling of sun on the water. I'm doing a lot of work with light and reflection. My partner Momo does neon work, and so she's always coming to the studio with neon, and I've been trying to convey like that feeling of neon in code, just inspired by the neon that I'm seeing. So a lot of kind of light experiments, just seeing kind of what you could do with code and light, printing it. And I post the work a lot, and you get really funny comments. I love the comment. Somebody said this is gorgeous and nauseating. When I was young, I had a reoccurring nightmare that looked a lot like this. You got some really weird, funny comments. Sometimes people say really beautiful things. I took a look at these full size. You wouldn't know it at a glance, but this is time-based work. But probably my favorite comment is this. I had a bad day. I saw your work. My day is good now. Thank you. So if I think about why I like to do sketching, why I love this medium, why I am like so thumbs down on the Jensen Huang quote, it's this. I want to make work, put it out there, and try to make people's days good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Zach. And this is like a kind of what I do miss, just being in person and just like hearing like, you know, people's reactions and like the energy of the room. This is something that we're kind of lacking. But I could imagine like just hearing people like gasp and wonder and be like with Allison's when you're reading out, like I could feel it, right? It's something that's like kind of hard to capture in this Zoom environment. But thanks again for sharing the work. And I think one of them like kind of like you said one word about like normalization, and this is this idea of just kind of getting things to 0 and 1. And that's one thing that I kind of want to help to kind of structure this panel discussion. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again, what you guys are gonna be looking at now. And this is live, which we could kind of I'll talk about in a second. So we have this idea of 0 to 1 is like a very important kind of concept that I grabbed onto, and I was able to kind of apply to a lot of things in programming. And so that's like if you could get anything into a 0 into 1, you know, you could do anything. The 0 is like the start, 0.5 is the middle, and 1 is the end, right? Or we have white on one side, we have black on the other side, and vice versa. Like you could drive a whole complex animation, and you just kind of, as long as you have 0 and you drive that to 1. Or if you have two colors or multiple colors, you know, as long as you have 0 to 1 and you're kind of going through them, like there's a lot of kind of control that you have within these kind of systems that we created. So what I'm doing here is I'm gonna like I just kind of wrote down some questions here, and we're gonna kind of go through our panel discussion this way. So we'll start off, and I have this little gradient here, so I just like, focus. And what I really like about like just like and just technology is just kind of having fun with like what you could already do with that program. Um, one of the things I kind of saw at the exhibit is just like how like artists back in the day, they just had like a few very simple tools and they were able to do a lot with it. And so I like having fun with our mural board here as well. So I kind of want to start off with our first kind of question, and part of the exhibit is just, you know, seeing how technology and how things have been like digitized over time. But I kind of want to go back and zoom back to the past and kind of get a sense of where, you know, what's like the first question, what's your earliest memory manipulating languages or images, right? And this could be a toy too. It doesn't have to necessarily be within a computer, but like, is there something in the past where that like you kind of look now and maybe that was kind of like a start for you to start kind of like going in that direction? Um, and I think Allison, I'll start with you. So what's that something in the past that like was kind of like your introduction or like your first kind of go at your career or your path?
At my career.
It could be a career, you know, it could just be anything. It just kind of like in your interest, right? I think it's more of your
Sure.
interest, yeah.
Well, you know, I was usually when I tell this story or when I answer a question like this, it goes through J.R.R. Tolkien, who I read, like, you know, I read The Hobbit. My dad gave it to me to read when I was like in 3rd grade or something like that. And I loved it. And that got me to be interested in language and linguistics because I was really into his constructed languages. And, I also learned to program when I was a kid on a little, first on a little 8-bit home computer, the TRS-80 Color Computer 2. For any fans in the house, shout out to the Color Computer 2. And then in high school, I was taking a creative writing class. I was mostly interested in like writing fantasy novels at that time, but my creative writing teacher showed us a poem by Gertrude Stein, As a Wife Has a Cow, a love story, and that just really captured me because it seemed like Gertrude Stein's work was like combining these threads of like making language do interesting things that were simultaneously not algorithmic, like Gertrude Stein wasn't using computer programs, but they're still, structured in a way that is alien to the way that language is usually structured, and that kind of like cemented things together. But recently I found the programming manual for the Tandy Color Computer 2 on archive.org or something like that. And this is what I read when I was like really, really small to learn how to program that computer. And I saw that there was like in the chapter where they first talk about strings, one of their examples was printing out a string that says a rose is 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 a rose over and over and over again. So now I'm thinking like it was just that. It was just that like string tutorial in the manual for the basic programming language for the Tandy Color Computer 2. That is where my career comes from. Exactly, is that line. So whoever wrote that, thank you. I'm having a pretty good life.
So Allison, so you would type that command onto the computer and it would just like line by line or word by word? Like how did it look like?
Oh, I don't remember from the thing. I assume it was like I could bring it
Yeah.
up, but it was probably just like a for loop that kept printing that string, or maybe appending to it after it. But it was interesting that was their example, because that is also a Gertrude Stein poem. So yeah.
That's a really great connection. Like I think that's like one of the best things to do when you're programming or like just like learning to program is make these connections, right? Because like a lot of the things that like usually when I'm teaching my students is trying to like they think programming. I teach a lot of graphic designers, and so programming is something just completely distant, and it's really far away. And so I always try to make connections to kind of bring it closer to them for them to understand.
Yeah.
Zach, what about you? What was
Yeah. So
yeah.
I actually was thinking of something that is not something like I was manipulating, but something that I saw that really inspired me, which was this. I was watching a television show, I think it was on PBS, and it was like people that make art with cars, like they decorate their cars, and there were like all these like crazy cars, like people put like cover the car with buttons or like painted the car in a really kind of cool way. But there was one car, and I found the video. I'm gonna paste it in the chat, which is a car that is like a VW Beetle that's covered in light bulbs. And I remember seeing this as like a really young kid and being like so amazed that you could have like a display, that you could create a surface, that you could drive around and you could have an image that's moving, that's animated. And for years, I like was like, did I hallucinate that? Like I saw this as a kid, but I never knew what the project was. I could never find it. And then I went to this like, I don't know, dinky automobile museum in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Pennsylvania, and then like turned the corner and saw the exact same show that I saw as like, a 6-year-old or 7-year-old or something. And it was so amazing to like be reacquainted with this thing that had a profound impact on my life. So I think as a kid, I think about that when I exhibit work, this idea that like maybe there's some young kid that like gets a chance to see something that I've made or some other artist or an exhibition like at LACMA, seeing some really cool, weird thing. And then they'll be like, they're really young, but maybe like years later, they will remember like, oh, I saw that, crazy thing that showed me something is possible. And for me, it was seeing this car with covered in light bulbs.
Yeah, I think that that's always like a great thing to like any visuals, right? That just like grabs your attention and then just kind of makes you wonder how is always like a great starting point. Um, and as you're telling us this, I also kind of want to invite the audience to, you could share your own experiences as well. It'll be great to kind of have a little bit of back and forth as we're doing this, because like for me the like just the word algorithm, I learned it from a Rubik's Cube when my brother gave me a Rubik's Cube and he told me like, hey, if you could solve this, like I'll buy you a PlayStation 2. And like I was younger and I was just like, I'm gonna do anything I can to get this PlayStation. And that's when I like learned some algorithms online, and then I was like I figured it out and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And that was like my introduction to algorithms. Okay, so what programs did you begin with? And we'll start with so Allison, we could go back to you.
I started with Basic for the color computer too, like I mentioned. There was a game creation system for MS-DOS called ZZT, which was actually created by Tim Sweeney of Epic Games fame. It was like his first attempt at making a system for like, user-generated content. So you just make little games that ran in text mode on DOS. And there was like a really, really simple scripting language for those for the game creation system. And that's kind of like where I learned like programming for the first time and interactivity and stuff like that.
And how young were you when you started kind of writing your own programs?
Oh, very young, like 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
Yeah.
Were did you play like a lot of like kind of like the text-based games? Or were there games that you were kind of playing with that kind of made you want to like what drove you to
Mhm.
keep programming? Because like one of the things like a lot of students will have when they're learning programming is just that it's really frustrating,
Mhm.
to learn at the beginning. Especially
Mhm.
when you're not taking a class and you're just kind of like it's
Mhm.
that kind of environment. What was that like? What was driving you back then?
I mean, I think I was getting constant rewards from adults for appearing to be clever because I was doing stuff on the computer. And that was probably honestly a big part of it. But I like making fun things. I liked the idea of making video games when I was a kid. I still do like that idea, but it's a different impulse now in a lot of ways. Um, and it's fun. I think once you get through the frustration, um, then the rewards of just like when stuff clicks into place and you feel like you're, in the zone, um, it just feels really good. It's a very pleasurable activity when you actually all parts of it are pleasurable. Some of it is like type 2 fun, but then some of it is actual fun.
Yes, and Zach, what about you?
Yeah, so when I was like young, I took a like my parents sent me to a like a workshop or course in learning Logo. So I learned like Logo and Basic and some of those languages, but I really didn't like do any programming until much later in life. And then for me, the sort of first programming language was ActionScript with from a tool called Flash, which I think is like we were discussing this offline, but like that for a lot of creative coders is a kind of gateway drug, because it was a tool you could do like timeline things, but you could also program keyframes, and so you could make like you could do things very without any code or 100% with code. So it's a great way to get started. And around that time, I was a student at Parsons, and I discovered a few other languages that meant so ActionScript meant a lot to me, but then a few other languages meant a lot to me. One was called Design by Numbers, which is really a precursor to processing. That was created by John Maida at the Aesthetics and Computation Group, and um, that programming language really spoke to me because it was very constrained. It had no color. It had like a fixed size canvas. The for loops were like artificially slowed down so that you could watch them.
Oh, wow.
But it was so beautiful, like within those constraints, you could make things. And I was really hungry as a young student. I was going to the bookstore and hanging out in the computer section of the bookstore, and every book was terrible. Learn C++ in 7 days, learn JavaScript in 21 days, you know, data types in Scala or whatever. But then there was this book, Design by Numbers, that was like, all these books were like how to do something, and the Design by Numbers was why. And for me, that was the first book. Maida was writing, putting into words what I was feeling as a student. And so that language means a lot to me. And then I really wanted to like study his work. So I learned PostScript, which is a fun programming language that actually you can like write a text document and then open it in Illustrator or open it in Preview. Like it's basically a programming language for graphics. But I knew that like Maida was using that to make his posters, and I was trying to recreate them to learn how he was doing what he was doing. So I learned PostScript. So for me, it was probably like ActionScript and then Design by Numbers in PostScript as the first languages that really meant a lot to me personally.
Yeah, so yeah, like kind of we're talking about like offline is, but just like Flash for me was like also my like when I really kind of got into programming, and but like I came from it from like animation because I was looking like it was like the early internet days, and Flash animations were the only things that you could actually share that was like like there was no YouTube back then. So like if you want to watch an animation, you had to see things through Flash. And I need to do that. I need to learn that. And I remember buying this giant Flash Bible, right? Like this huge, and like half of it was action script and stuff like that, but the other half was animation. And that's something that I kind of really like just like because I learned the first half, I just self-taught. There's no classes and stuff kind of like to do that kind of stuff back in the day. And the action script was always in the back, and I kind of had to dip a little bit into it, right? Just to kind of, well, like how do you actually play your animation, or how does it like all load? And I have to kind of use a little bit of code, and that was kind of like the definitely the gateway drug to start kind of like moving your timeline around, going from one place to another. Uh, this is This is really great because I kind of like as you're talking to me, I'm really like missing bookstores, like as how like we used to just hang out there, right? And I just kind of order something online and just kind of just shows up, like that experience of being at a bookstore and just kind of exploring these topics.
They do still exist, you know.
Yeah,
They do. And there are libraries also.
Yeah, like I have two kids now, and like and I'm going back to libraries, and I'm just like it's like, oh wow, like I kind of like I it's just like times change. The bookstores I would go to are gone, and then like you kind
Yeah.
of start adapting. But definitely going back to library is the good thing to do. Okay, we have a question from an audience member for Allison. Do you have a favorite poetic style? Like,
Style, I don't know. I have favorite poets. I have favorite, poetic eras. I'm especially fond of Jackson Maklow, Louis Zukofsky, poets in the language school and related people. Susan Howe, I like I don't know. I like a bunch of stuff. Stuff that's like really, really playing with language and syntax in unexpected ways. That's really the only poetry that I connect with. If it's lyric, then I just kind of like, I'm like, I could read a novel and it would be a better way of talking about this. Just huge slam on lyricism out of nowhere. But yeah, the more invested in language, the better for me.
thanks, Allison. I'm just looking at the time, and it's just like, yeah, time is going really, really fast. So I want to try to speed forward through this. We're still stuck in the past, which is good. But I think I think kind of going over here, I think one thing I do want to talk about, and maybe maybe these could be kind of related, is just like what was your first, paid job using algorithms, or like what was like one of your first like failures like with programs, like I think whatever of these kind of questions kind of come up to mind, I think, or you guys could pick out of this section here. Zach, since you're unmuted, you could kind of take a stab at this one first.
Yeah, I think the first, I don't remember the first job I got paid programming, but I think it was working with an artist when I was a graduate student. And he had a very cool project, which was a kind of table with an image. And I think when you rotated the table, maybe use an accelerometer, the image, the pixels of the image would break apart and kind of reform a new image. And I just remember at that time being a kind of like beginning, like being really excited about code, and then yeah, having this chance to work with these artists, like being a kind of assistant for artists. So this, I maybe had done something before then, but that's the first time I remember actually feeling like, oh, I could be paid. I could be like doing this thing that I love. Like I love particle systems, and like I get paid to do that. Like that for me, that was exciting, and it's still exciting. Like even today, I'm like so thankful. I had this experience where I'm like, oh, I'm doing particles. I'm doing some like, fluid animation this week. And I was like, oh, I still can't believe somebody pays me to do this. So I think like, I don't know, probably 25 years later, having the same feeling.
Is that something like like when I started kind of learning playing guitar, I kind of go back to the same kind of song over and over again. Is that something kind of like you think about like it's like a
Yeah.
script or code that you kind of revisit over and over again because it's just like it's
Yeah.
it's like your favorite?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, especially so I do daily sketching, and I think one of the things that is really important to me is the ability to repeat myself and the ability to like tap into an idea or have like a form that you go back to again and again. And it's like a safe space. It's a bit like a place that you know, but it's so nice to see it with new eyes. It's so nice to be older and you have like a new perspective or new ideas. So, and it's like meeting an old friend. And for me, something like particle systems, like an old friend. Like, I I use it in my work repeatedly. And it's a sort of thing I'll come back to and just be like, oh, hi, old friend, how's it going? There's like a familiarity that comes with it. Obviously, like you want to make new things, but if you're making new things all the time, it's also very uncomfortable. So I think
Yeah.
creative process is about managing the unknown with the known. And I think a lot about it a lot like navigating a city. Like if you come to a new city, it's really exciting. Like let's say you're living in a city for a week or a month or a year, you kind of like you map out like some place that like, oh, that's a cool street. I'm gonna check that out. And then you go to like you find some new place and you go back and forth between known and unknown. And I think there's something about the creative process, which is also about kind of finding that balance.
Yes, and that was like one of the things I posted on social media when I was like kind of promoting this panel discussion is like, going and exploring into like these unknown spaces and like figuring out like what those are and then kind of coming back to a safe space. And then I I think it's just the fact that like it gives us that opportunity to explore and be unexpected, and you just kind of have an idea like, oh, like yeah, really don't know this yet, and kind of
Mm.
we're able to like revisit it. I think it's really great to see this like in your work as well.
Mm.
Um, Allison, want me to? I could go back to the kind of these questions here.
I don't know. I've been doing like professional software stuff since I was in junior high. I started working for like the city doing their website stuff. I worked as a software engineer through college. I think the first like art related paid gig that I had was like doing some grunt work for Luc Dubois on one of his pieces in the like 2008 or 2009 or so, just doing a bunch of web scraping for him. And I had like a bunch of hard drives like stacked
Mhm.
tall on my desk. So I don't know. And the question like what difference did it make to your practice with algorithms? Like my practice has always been about algorithms. It doesn't really have substance other than that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, so it's 3 o'clock. I think we could go over just by a little bit. So we're going to we you kind of did talk about, both of you talked about your work in the beginning, so we're gonna kind of skip over the present.
Mhm.
And so I think we have just maybe quickly, I kind of just want to know how you guys, you could look at both of these kind of questions, right? Like, the future of algorithms, like what does that look like in your school or in your classes,
Mhm.
or better yet, is just like how are you like showing students like how to work with AI within their work? Zach, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Um, I actually have no idea about the future, but one thing that I pose to my students, so I have a research group at the Media Lab called Future Sketches, and the group there is looking at kind of what is the future of creative coding. The thing that I ask the students is like, okay, it's 2025, we still write for loops. We've written for loops since, the 80s or 70s, right? For int I equals 0, I less than 100, I plus plus, it looks the same. Will it look the same in 20 years? I doubt it. And I don't know if it's like maybe the form factor of the way we're writing code is changing, or the location that we're coding, or the way we're engaging with code is different. But I'm really curious, and I ask the students to investigate that. In terms of AI, I think the thing that I try to counsel my students on, because I've been doing this sort of media art for a long time, is that there are like waves of hype every 5 years. Something new will be exciting. Right now, it's machine learning, AI, right? You can't go like um, you can't even go a conversation like this without bringing it up or talking about it. But 10 years ago or 5 years ago is augmented reality, virtual reality. There's like big data. Every moment there's like some kind of hype. And what I try to tell my students is that of course, it's very important. We should be there. We should explore it. We should poke at it. We should probe it. We should understand it. But when there's a lot of hype, we should treat it like it's a wind and we're sailing, and we don't have to sail in the direction of the wind. That wind is powerful because that means that there's money, there's attention, there's interest, there's a lot of but there's hype, and that wind wants to push in a certain direction. And we should use it like sailing and sail in the direction we want to go. I don't want the students to be demo makers. I don't want them to be making work in service of technology. I don't want them to be making demonstrations of technology or thinking of ideas that help make a technology cool or approachable, but actually the technology should be in service of the idea, whether it's AI or VR or AR or whatever. It should be in service of a goal or an artistic goal. So I try to counsel my students on like the hype and how to successfully navigate it, because it's real and it has a big impact on their work.
Mm-hmm. And Allison, like, what's your take on AI, especially because like like you trained your own models and like
Mhm.
in a very very like ethical way, and but like
Mhm.
now these tools are kind of like like it went from like this like subculture to like main culture now, and it's just like it's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Well, yeah, and I think, the second question about what are the future directions kind of blends into that, because I feel like, at least for me, my experience of this was like a whole bunch of people were interested in my work doing like, machine learning stuff in language in a creative way. And I'd have like a bunch of rich people talking to me, and I'd get invited to conferences and stuff like that. Um, that doesn't happen anymore. And the reason that doesn't happen anymore is because I don't like AI. And I'm realizing in retrospect, the reason that I had all of that attention is that those guys thought that my goal was also to automate the art of making poetry or the art of whatever, um, in order to, put creative people out of a job or bring about the singularity or whatever other like, weird ritualistic thing that those guys have in their minds. So um, I think that is like a big deal. And I think, at least for me, I know other people have also had this realization before I have. I think it's a point where I realized like, oh, hey, actually, the work that we're doing as creative technologists, new media artists, whatever, is about like it has an ethical component, it has a moral component. It's about it's not just it shouldn't just be about being the PR and marketing arm of Google, right?
Mhm.
And I'm as guilty as any other artist with that. I've taken money from Google before to make a big project, you know. Um, but it's got to be it has to be different now that, you know, technology has been shown to be such a negative impact on our lives, and like just very, very evidently a brutal tool of people who seek to oppress. So um for me, like I tell my students, just don't use AI. You're not going to, it's not going to help you to understand things, and you're going to become dependent on a tool that is extractive. And I don't want my students to do that. I don't want my students to come out of my class with like, you know, a $30 a month habit of having
Yeah.
to like, you know, pay Sam Altman in order to do the basic work of programming. And the code that you get from that stuff sucks anyway. So why do it? Anything that's worth doing, you probably can't do with AI, with these large language model tools. At the same time, like I think machine learning is really interesting, and I do think it's a tool that we can use to make, you know, interesting poetic juxtapositions in my case. But I think the stuff that I was doing with, you know, extremely small corpora, extremely small models that I could train on my, you know, 2013 MacBook Air, like I think that's way more interesting than like people typing in like type me a Shakespeare to give me a Shakespeare sonnet that sounds like it was written by I don't know, Santa Claus or something. Like it just it's not that's not it.
Yeah.
Um
I totally agree with you. One of the things that I wanna when I was like as I was using more like ChatGPT and like other language models, it's like, oh wow, it's almost like offloading some of my thinking capabilities, right? Because I'm kind of getting a little impatient and I just want results now. And like and that's something that I've had feedback from my students as well too.
yeah, I'm not like mad at people who
Yeah.
use it as part of their process or anything. I just think when you're learning, especially, like
Hmm.
you have to learn how it works, not just what it looks like.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thanks, Allison. And to end like on a little bit more positive note, I think whoop, yeah, hold on. Go here. So we're kind of ending with the modulo. So in modulo in programming, it's kind of like the remainder, and usually how I use it is just kind of resetting, going back to zero. And in this case, just kind of just want to end it really quickly and just what can you tell like an inspiring, me artist or designer or poet, and how to kind of get started. And like there's probably a few people here that are just really interested in kind of, saw this talk and saw some of the work at the exhibit or just feeling inspired.
Yeah, sure. The thing that I always say is find a community. That if you're interested in something, if you're excited about something, that the best thing that you can do if you want to learn it is find other people who are also excited about it, that you can share ideas with, that you can learn from. And oftentimes the creative coding tools are really kind of like fronts for communities. So something like P5JS is also, I mean, it's a tool that you can use to do really interesting work with, but it's also a really vibrant and friendly community. And I think that's very important as a beginner is to not do this alone. That actually programming, it's like, it is a kind of typically like a solitary experience where you're sort of working with code at a laptop, like it's like a something that's harder to do communally. And the more you can find community around it, the easier it is to progress. So that's the thing that I say, like find a community. And then the message that I always have for young people is that the world is hungry for ideas. That sometimes when you're getting started, it can feel like, oh, there's all this cool work, there's all these like great projects, there's all these great libraries, great, institutions. And the thing that I feel strongly, like really, really strongly, like really deeply, is that the world is hungry. That the world is hungry for new voices. That the world is hungry for new tools. That the world is hungry for new institutions. And so even like, I think on the one hand, finding a community is great as a beginner, but also in my own life and my own practice, building community, whether it's like School for Poetic Computation or open frameworks or whatever, like those things have been so valuable, have meant so much to me to build a community around my practice. And that just to know, like, the world is hungry, I think is an important thing for young people to hear.
Mhm. Allison, I that's pretty good. What can you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think specifically in my practice as, someone who's teaching a lot of people how to program for the first time, I tell them a couple of things. One is that this activity is useless. This is not a useful activity. This is not a vocational activity. You shouldn't be learning this because you think it's going to get you a job. Because that's not where the beauty and interest of computer programming is, right? So trying to separate it from that expectation of like, I got to learn this or I'm going to starve in the future or whatever. I'm trying to like loosen them up and start to appreciate computation not for its capability of like accomplishing an end, but to giving you an understanding of like your own understanding of the world, like your own aesthetic and the way that computation helps you to work that out and work through that. I also like really an important thing is to try to deprogram students who think that they are not coders. They'll come into the classroom being like, oh, well, I can't do this. And if you ask them why, it always comes back to, oh, I'm not a member of the demographic that is supposed to be able to do this, right? So just like very, very forcefully explaining like, no, you don't have to be that in order to be good at coding. And if you experience some friction at first, people have friction when they learn something for the first time. Like if it was a knitting class, you wouldn't say like, oh, I'm not a knitter because like 10 minutes into the class, it wasn't making sense to you, right? Like I'm congenitally like incapable of knitting. That doesn't make any sense. So trying to get students over those two humps and saying like, this is an arts practice. This is an epistemological practice that helps you to understand the world and to understand yourself. And everyone has a right to do it. It's not just, certain people.
Oh, very well said. Okay, Allison, Zach, thanks again. This is really entertaining. I wish we could do more of these. This is, I think, just going over all the things that you said. I think people are gonna just it's gonna take a while just to even settle. I think it's like we had like a very good meal here. Just thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for moderating.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, thank you. Very, very good questions. And I love the way you organized it.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. And thanks HMCT and LACMA and folks for arranging this. It's really awesome to be together.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
See you guys.